Hello everybody and welcome to a new video. So today what we're gonna do is look at more most anticipated books for 2024. I decided to do this a little differently, so I chose 5 books from each of my favorite genres and we're gonna discuss those because I feel like a lot of fantasy gets very hardly pushed by the publishers, but a lot of like other things like horror and non-fic kind of like get like pushed away when it comes to new releases unless they become very popular. So let's get right to it. So the first book that I want to read is To Gaze Upon Wicked Gods. So I will show you the cover because it's absolutely beautiful. I'll put it in this side actually. And this one is by Molly X Chang. It's coming out April 16, 2024. And the summary says that in this magical epic fantasy, a young woman cursed with the power of death must decide if saving her family is worth betraying her country. The first installation of a gripping new series. I think what interested about this book is the beautiful cover and the Chinese mythology, and also like this woman being able to have the power of death. So I feel like you'll have like a very interesting like development of her having to like overcome this very destructive power. And the next book that I'm really looking forward to is a book called Phantom Folk. It's by Elisa Chang and it's coming out February 27, 2024. And then the summary says that it's from fantasy's most exciting new voices, Elisa Chang, comes a modern myth-inflicted story of a revolution and magic set against glittering, semi-submerged city in Tikawi. Perfect for fans of J City and Bone Star Daughter. I think what interested about me is that it's kind of like a submerged city, kind of like Atlantis, and I really love the mythology around that. And it feels like Tiankawi might be the Chinese version of this. So I think it's going to be very interesting to read, and yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. It's coming out on February 27, 2024. So the next book that I want to read is The Head Witch of Foxale. This book is coming out on March 12, 2024 and is by Anna Bright. And the summary says that in this gorgeous standalone fantasy romance, perfect for fans of Margaret Rogerson and Alice Saft, a rebellious witch undertakes a last-ditch quest to restore magic to medieval Wales as two princes vie for her heart. So I do love a good like love triangle. The cover, like the woman and the man look like so smitten with each other. I love that it's gonna be a standalone and that it's romance and Wales. I don't know a lot about the history of Wales, so I think it'll be interesting to see some of the folk history of Wales. So yeah, that one's actually the one I'm looking forward to the most so far. Okay, so the next book that I'm looking forward to is The Dead Cat Tail Assassin. And this one comes out on April 23, 2024. And it is by, I can't pronounce that. So it's Pete Deli Clark, I believe. So, I put the cover right here. And then the synopsis says, the dead cat tail assassins are not cats, nor they have tails, but they are most assuredly deadly. Nebula and Alex award winner Peter Kellick introduces a brand new world and a fantastical city full of gods and assassins. So the summary keeps going on and on. But honestly, this reminded me of like Jade Kristoff quite a bit when I was reading the summary. And I feel like I love a good assassin story and it felt very witty. And I think I'm going to really enjoy it. It comes out on April 23rd, 2024. And it has like a very strong female main character who's a badass assassin, and they have like assassin school and assassin rules, and those are all tropes that really interest me all the time, and I tend to like the books that I read with those tropes, so I feel like I'm gonna have a ton of fun with this book. Okay, so the next book that I'm really looking forward to is The Sky on Fire by Jen Lyons. This book is coming out on July 9, 2024. And it's a book about dragons. So that's what immediately caught my attention. I am obsessed with dragons since like Iron Flame and Fourth Reign came out. But this book actually seems like it's gonna have a lot more world building and might have a little bit better writing. So that's kind of what caught my eye. So the synopsis says, from the acclaimed author of Chorus of Dragons series, this propulsive new standalone fantasy is Dragon Riders of Pern for modern audience. So enter a world ruled by dragons. So the synopsis is going on and on, but actually what caught my attention is that it's a standalone, it has dragons, and it seemed to be well written, and I feel like I'm gonna enjoy it. Another story about dragon riders. Seems to be a lot of fun. So the next category that we're gonna discuss is science fiction, which is my favorite category. And I picked up a couple books that I'm interested in. The first one has the most beautiful cover ever. This cover is like chef kiss. I love it. So it's called Crown of Starlight. And it's coming out on May 14, 2020, May 14, 2024. And then it's by Kate Corain. And then the synopsis says, great mythology takes to the stars in the steamy sci-fi reimagining of the tale of Ariadne and Dionysus. So I'm guessing Greek people that I don't know about. The first book of a snarky, queer, lushy, romantic duology set in the galaxy of monstrous mortals, bloodthirsty gods, and love fierce enough to shatter the cosmos. So I feel like romantasy is having its moment right now, but I'm really looking forward to sci-fi romance to have its moment pretty soon as well. So I feel like this might be the opening to that. It sounds like gods, it sounds like sci-fi. I hope that it still has actual science backing all this up. Like, I don't mind if people just make stuff up, but it has to be mixed stuff up that makes sense, okay? Like, it's called, I feel like people don't respect the science fiction and romance and fantasy distinction a lot, because romance you can just like make things up, but science fiction you're meant to have some science behind it, and I feel like a lot of worlds just kind of like don't do that anymore. But I hope that this one actually takes a little bit of science into account. It doesn't have to be like a lot of science, but I will enjoy it if it has some science in it. And yeah, I think that will be one of the most anticipated books. I'm really looking forward to it. I feel like if they can pull this off, it might become one of my new favorite books. But you never know till you read it. So the next book that I want to read is Floating Hotel by Grace Curtis. Is coming out on March 19, 2024. And this one immediately gave me Becky Chamber vibes. I've read every single Becky Chamber book, so I'm kind of like picking at straws now. So I wanted to see if there's anything that's kind of like similar that's coming out that is really exciting. And a cozy sci-fi, which it is my favorite genre of all time. So this book says that this cozy debut science fiction novel tells the story of misfits, rebels, found family, and mystery that spans the stars. So yeah, that sounds exactly like something I would absolutely devour and love. This is a debut novel, so I feel like if Grace Curtis does a good job, I could become like a lifelong fan. So yeah, I'm just really looking forward to this new book. And in like a 180 different approach, we have this next book, which is Ghost Station, which is by S.A. Barnes. I think S.A. Barnes has a lot of books. She's a pretty popular author, I believe. But I don't know if I've read a lot of books by her, or him, I don't know. But it's coming out April 9, 2024, and the reason that it called my attention was because it's a sci-fi horror, and sci-fi horror is one of the things that freaks me out the most. I feel like I really enjoy Alien and Predator and those movies that just build tension, and you don't know what's in the ship, and you don't know who's affected and who's not affected, and it's just, I love it. I love it more than like normal horror. So yeah, so I think this might be a winner. The synopsis says a crew must try to survive on an ancient abandoned planet in the latest space horror novel from S.A. Barnes, acclaimed author of Dead Silence. So I think I read this the synopsis, I read it already, and it said that basically this psychologist is in charge of this mission because she's in charge of making sure that people don't go crazy with this mysterious disease, and people actually do start going crazy, and it is amazing. So I think it'll be pretty good, and I'll tell you what I think about it when I read it. So this one is my wild card pick, if there was even a wild card pick to begin with. It's Earthbound by Frances Wren. This one comes out in March 25th, 2024, and it seems to be a little bit different to what I'm used to, but I'll read you the synopsis. So it says, when Ethan saves the life of a fire starter, it's nothing unusual. He's the only healer on a call-in hospital, and that gunshot wound isn't going to regenerate itself. But his patient turns out to be Coraline Arden, heiress to the pharmaceutical empire, controlling Britain's water supply. Her twin Javier is a man who starts sending Ethan flowers at work, and B seems terrified terrified of a secret, and C has the cheekbones and earnest to make up for both. So I think this is like a romantic, it seems like it's like a romance. It might be like an LGBTQ, a queer romance between this guy who has the ability to regenerate itself, regenerate other people, and this guy who controls all the water supply in the universe. So it seems a little off. It seems like it might be like more of a romance. I don't know. I'll see it when I read it. It's one of the ones that I'm like more cautiously optimistic about. I think the cover really pulled my attention. And yeah, I think it will be interesting, and I'll definitely give it a try. Okay, the next one is Exit Black by Joe Pitkin. It's coming out February 20th, 2024. And this one says that it's Die Hard meets The Martian. That is the tagline. And I think that's everything with a dash of Knives Out. And that is like my 3 favorite medias. The Martian is my favorite book. Well, actually, I don't know. Is it my favorite? I don't know. But whatever. One of my favorite books. Die Hard is an amazing movie I really enjoy. And Knives Out is like one of my favorite mysteries. Like that came out in the last 5 years. So I was immediately like, yes. And then it's an action-packed sci-fi thriller. So I think that has everything I need to know. Read the synopsis because it sounds amazing. But those are basically like the buzzwords to this book. Okay, so I did end up reading the synopsis again because I was curious. So I guess it is like Knives Out because these people are all pulled in a spaceship. It is pretty much the richest people on Earth get to be on in a spaceship that is actually meant to be like a research spaceship, but because they need the money, they open it to other people, so it becomes more like a hotel, like a fancy hotel. And I guess like somebody invades the spaceship, kind of like in Die Hard, and they're demanding ransom. So I guess that is how it's like Die Hard. And then I guess it's like The Martian because you do have this like very highly intelligent researchers in this spaceship that can like I guess like do like Home Alone type of booby traps to actually end up like winning back the spaceship. And that sounds amazing. Sign me right up. I'm super excited for this one. And again, it comes out February 20th, 2024. So we don't have to wait around a lot more longer for this book to come out. Okay, so now we're moving on to romances, which I don't read a lot of romances, but I feel like I have the most fun reading romances. So I do have some that I'm looking forward to for 2024. So the first one, it is The Pairing by Casey McQuiston. Casey McQuiston famously wrote Red, White, and Royal Blue, which is one of like TikTok, Instagram, everywhere. It was a sensation when it came out. And I haven't read anything from her since, because the other books that she's written were just not calling my attention, but this one is. So this book synopsis says, Casey McQuiston's latest romantic comedy, 2 bisexual exes accidentally book the same European food and wine tour and challenge each other to an international hookup competition to prove that they're over each other. And they are over each other, right? So I think I was just reading that line twice. But yeah, so basically, in international food and wine competition, I love like books about food. I don't know why. And like exes, and like it's like a competition, like kind of making each other jealous. And in real life, I do not enjoy that, but in books, I am absolutely here for the toxic behavior. So I think I'm gonna really enjoy that book. It's coming out on August 6th, 2024, so very close to my birthday. And yeah, so that is the next book that I'm really looking forward to. And then this is a ridiculous book to be my most anticipated book, but it is. Like, I am really looking forward to this book. So it's called Fangirl Down by Tessa Bailey. Okay, it took me a while to find it. So it's coming out on February 13th, 2024, so we don't have to wait around for it a lot. And the thing is, like, I don't promote this on this channel, but I really do enjoy golf. I like playing golf. I like watching golf. To a certain extent. Like, I watch like the final round on Sunday of golf. I'm not like a whole weekend watcher. But yeah, I do enjoy golf. So this one is the first golf romance, and I feel like we got like hockey romance, we have football romances, we have soccer romances, and it was about time for this romance to expand other sports, and especially other sports that I am personally interested in, because I cannot give a lick of care for hockey. I've never watched a hockey game a day in my life, and I was still like super into hockey romances. So I imagine it'll be even better for sports that I can actually understand. So yeah, so this one is the Tessa Bailey's Big Shot Fangirl Down golf romance. It's about this guy who's kind of like at the end of his career, but through it all, he has had this very consistent fangirl that has been in every single one of his games, always cheering on. And when he finally decides to quit, she kind of decides that maybe she was putting her faith on the wrong man. And when he notices that she's no longer cheering him on, he kind of like really misses her. And then they decide to pair up to reignite his career, and she's gonna become his caddy. I'm sorry, I really struggle with pronouns. But yeah, girl is becoming caddy of golfer. Golfer is hot, girl is hot. There's gonna be a romance. So yeah, I really do look forward to this. It's kind of like a fun romance, and I hope it's good. Tessa Bailey is actually one of my favorite romance authors. I feel like she's always has the tension, and the writing is pretty solid. So I'm looking forward to this one. Okay, the next book that I'm really looking forward to is The Rom-Commers by Catherine Center. So this one comes out on June 11, 2024, and I feel like this might be more like Emily Henry type of romance, less like bubbly, more like a little bit more serious. I think that can be pretty fun. So the synopsis says that she's rewriting his love story, but can she rewrite her own? So apparently, like, this is two authors. One of them wrote a screenplay for a romance. The other one is kind of like rewriting his screenplay, and he kind of doesn't like that because, like, I guess nobody likes their work being rewritten. So they have like a little like feud going on, very much enemies to lovers vibe. So I think that'll be fun. The next book is Happily Never After by Lynn Painter, and I feel like this one's the more like rom-commy after all. So in this book, basically, two people have this very weird job where they're like a objector at weddings. So they're basically in the wedding when their people are saying like, oh, does anybody object to this union? They're supposed to object because they got hired to object by one of the people in the wedding, because they don't want to get married, but they also don't want to like make a big scandal out of it. So they become like objectors in weddings. It's kind of like a super weird job. And the main characters both have this super weird job, and they're kind of following for each other. So yeah, that one sounds super fun. Very much like early 2000s rom-com. I think it'll be a lot of fun. Okay, and then the last one for the romance category, we have Don't Want You Like a Best Friend. So this one is by Emily R. Alban, and it comes out on January 9, 2024, so pretty soon. And this one kind of like caught my eye because it's more like Victorian romance, very much like Bridgerton vibes, and it is about a queer romance, so that's actually really fun. So the synopsis says, a swoon-worthy debut queer Victorian romance in which two debutantes distract themselves from having to seek husbands by setting up their widowed parents, and instead find their perfect match in each other. The lesbian Bridgerton parent trap you never knew you needed. So I think that'll be like super fun. Bridgerton and the Parent Trap. Again, I like two of my favorite types of media, so I think it's gonna be a ton of fun. Mystery category. So the first book is The Last Murder at the End of the World. This one is by Stuart Tudor. So he has written some of my favorite books, like The Devil, what's it called? The Devil and the Darkest Water, and The 7.5 Deaths of Emily Hardcastle. I believe those were written by him. And this one is his newest mystery. So he's kind of like a sci-fi mystery writer. But in this book, there's this island that has a bunch of people that are meant just to work. And if they work, they're being kept safe. But somebody got murdered, and if the murder doesn't get resolved in a certain amount of time, then the fog that has consumed the entire world will come to this island and kill everybody. So that's what Stuart Tudor is kind of like known for. Very time-bendy mystery books where you can see a lot of perspectives and when you have to solve a mystery. And I love these books. I feel like they're super smart, super well plotted, and just incredibly entertaining for myself personally. So I think I'm really gonna enjoy his newest book. So the next book is The Fury by Alex Michaelides, and this one is coming out on January 16, 2024, and is also a mystery. So the synopsis says, a masterfully paced thriller about a reclusive ex-movie star and her famous friend whose spontaneous trip to a private Greek island is upended by a murder. And then from New York Times bestselling author of The Silent Patient. So I think this is why I chose this book, because I really did enjoy The Silent Patient, so I want to read what the author is doing next. So the next book that I want to read is No One Can Know by Kate Alice Marshall. It's coming out January 23rd, 2024, and this book kind of reminded me of The Only One Left by Riley Sager, which is a book that I read recently. So it's kind of like a similar premise. A woman is the only one left, and her parents died mysteriously, so she was always blamed for it, and she kind of escaped her life and left everything behind because she didn't want to be like guilt into like people believe that she did it, so she didn't want that guilt following her around. But because of her financial situation, she kind of has to go back to her town, and she actually was very wealthy, so her mansion. And it's kind of like a whodunit, kind of like you want to figure out whether or not she had something to do with her parents murdered and what actually happened that night. So I think that one will be super interesting. I think that The Only One Left was one of my favorite books this year, so I want to know if there's anything that kind of scratched that same itch. So I think that will be fun. And She's Not Sorry by Mary Kubica. Mary Kubica is a very famous thriller author. So in this book, an ICU nurse accidentally uncovers a patient's frightening past in this chilling thriller. I think what happens in this book is that a nurse is treating a patient, and the patient kind of happens to be a serial killer. At least that's what the synopsis says, and she's kind of like having to trace his steps backwards. And because of some circumstances, I think people think that she was also a part of it. So yeah, I think that will be pretty fun. It comes out on April 2nd, 2024. The next book is Only If You're Lucky by Stacey Williams. It is published on January 16, 2024. And this one caught my eye because it is kind of like a college mystery. So apparently these girls were roommates in college, and one day somebody gets murdered and only one of them could have done it. And I do really enjoy books where it's like a college and it's very preppy, and people are very wealthy, and then one of them just like murder, and you kind of have to figure out what happened. I read a book that was pretty similar to the synopsis, and I really did enjoy it. Let me see if I can find it. I can't find it. So if you know what book I'm talking to you about, comment it on the comments down below, because I really want to know. I feel like I forget the titles of books all the time, and it drives me freaking insane. Okay, so I'm gonna go through the next couple books really quickly. So they're all nonfiction. So the first one I want to read is Drunkish by Stephanie Wilder Taylor. This book is about a woman who kind of has a relationship with alcohol that she doesn't really know whether or not it's an addiction, whether or not it's too much, and she tries to cut alcohol out of her life. And I think that is pretty interesting. I would like to read more about it. I'm very interested on like moving away from alcoholic drinks and just doing like zero proof drinks in the next year. So I feel like that will be a good book for me to read before going in like this adventure, because I feel like a lot of like social things have to do with drinking alcohol, but now we're moving more away from alcohol. So I think that will be a fun book to read. The next one is Smoke and Ashes by Amitabh Ghosh. And this one is about the opium crisis, and it's more about like the history of opium crisis and opium epidemics, and it's hidden history. So it's the hidden histories of like opium, because obviously it has a lot to do with like China, and now there's still an opium epidemic in America. So I think it'll be pretty interesting to see that and the history of all the movement. And then the next book is Etc., an illustrated guide to Latin phrases. I think this is very interesting because I obviously speak Spanish as my first language, and I feel like there's so many fun phrases that you don't really know where they come from, even though I say them all the time. So I think this will be a great book to read, kind of like a funner, lighter read where I get to know like where all these phrases come from. And then the next one is Cool Foods This one is by Robert Downey Jr. and Thomas Costigan. And this one I feel like it's pretty interesting because it's erasing your carbon footprint one bite at a time. And I actually work as a food scientist full time, like that is my job. And I'm very interested on going like pretty like carbon neutral when it comes to food and how can we achieve that and what like personal sacrifices we would have to do in order to make our food supply more sustainable long term. So those are all things that interest me personally, so that's why I'm reading that. And then it is a memoir that I want to read. It's called My Escape from Christian Patriarchy, A Well-Trained Wife by Tia Levings. I'm just very interested in this personally. I didn't grow up in a Christian household, but I interact with a lot of Christian people here in Georgia, but I never really understood why people sometimes act the way they act. So I do like to read books like this just to get in the mind of other people and to able to empathize and understand people a lot better. So yeah, those are all the books of non-fiction books that I personally want to read. I feel like non-fictions are very much like personal to yourself, what you want to learn, what are your interests. And these ones are kind of like my interests, are more like history, language, food, and yeah. So that's pretty much the ones I'm looking forward to. And then the next category is horror. So for this one, I actually just have 4 books. I don't have 5. I feel like horror is one of those books, like one of those things, like nothing really sounds interesting to me until like somebody specifically like recommends something, and then I'll be like, oh yeah, that sounds amazing. So yeah, so the first book that I have is The Woods All Black by, who's this by? Okay, so it is by Lee Mandello. It is published on March 19, 2024, and the synopsis says, The Woods All Black is equal parts historical horror, trance romance, and blood-soaked revenge, all set in a 1920 Appalachia. So honestly, that synopsis did not sound familiar to me at all. And yeah, I will see if I read it. I'll probably wait to see some reviews before I read it. The next book that I'm looking forward to is The House That Horror Built. And this one is by Christina Henry, which is a pretty popular author, I feel like. But I feel like this might be her first like horror book. And this one is about a like movie that they're filming, but people start dying. Let me look if that's correct. Okay, so it says a single mother working in the gothic mansion of a reclusive horror director stumbles upon terrifying secrets in the captivating new horror novel from the national best-selling author of Good Girls Don't Die and Horseman. I have not read either of those books, and it's kind of weird because this book has 7 ratings in 4 weeks, and it already has a 3 stars. But I guess it's one of those things like when not a lot of people have read your book, if it's just like average, it's just gonna be way down. So yeah, that is The House That Horror Built. Again, like horror is kind of one of those things that I really have to have a good recommendation before I decide to read it. Okay, so the next book is The Bad Ones by Melissa Albert. So this one has a very spooky cover. I actually really do like. And it says, Goddess, goddess, count to 5. In the morning, who's alive? In the course of a single winter's night, 4 people vanished without a trace across a small town. Nora's estranged best friend Becca is one of the lost. As Nora tries to untangle the truth of Becca's disappearance, she discovers a darkness in her town's past, as well as a string of coded messages Becca left for her to unravel. These clues lead Nora to a piece of local folklore, a legendary goddess of forgotten origins who played a role in Nora and Becca's own childhood games. So it feels like one of those like a Bloody Mary type of like ghost stories, and I'm really looking forward to it. It is like the genres is filed under fantasy, horror, young adult thriller, gothic, and mystery. So it might be one of those like gender bender kind of situations. Like it might be a couple different genres, but I'm putting it under my horror recommendations. Just so you know, it is kind of falls into more like fantasy horror. So the last book that I want to recommend is Supplication. It's by Noor Abi Nakul. I believe that's how you pronounce that name. And it says that we follow her as she emerges from captivity into an unnamed nightmarish city, seeking some meaning to her new reality. As figures emerge from the night, some offering sanctuary and others judgments, she keeps moving, making her way through this fever dream of a narrative. Supplication is haunting, embodied tales of alienation, fear, and the queer quest for respite. So yeah, this seems like, remember that movie, I forgot what it's called, where like for like 24 hours people could like rampage cities and stuff. So I feel like this is kind of like a person just like waking up and trying to like deal with that reality and just trying to find shelter. So yeah, that is kind of like the last one. Again, like horror is one of those categories that I'm unsure about the most, but I feel like a lot of my best books of the year, like I feel like I read Monstrelia this year, that was really good, and I also read this book that was about people eating people. I forgot what it's called. It's super nightmarish. I'll put it over here. And that one's also my favorite, one of my favorite books of the year. And yeah, so those are all the books that I'm really looking forward to 2024. Comment down below what books are you looking forward to. And please subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll see you in my next video. Bye!